It has been revealed by now that Trump deliberately downplayed the seriousness of the coronavirus in order to, as he says, try to prevent a panic. And one of the very unethical things about this is that he knew how bad it was and refused to take the proper action in order to deal with it. Now, this was revealed by conversations that were recorded with a journalist. However, not only do we have his admission, but we now have documents that have been leaked that show that this president actually knew how bad it was and his efforts to cover it up using the state bureaucratic apparatus. Now, it shows that he was trying to force everything to open up and pretend the virus didn't exist in order to get the economy back to normal as quickly as possible in order for this next election. In other words, to make him look good. Now, the White House officials tried to circumvent the CDC by looking for alternative data that would say things like the pandemic was actually going down and that it posed no risk to children. That's right, they were deliberately looking for information outside of the CDC, often seen as one of the most credible, used to be seen as one of the most credible health services in the world in terms of collecting information and keeping abreast of things like this. Now, the effort included Dr. Deborah Birx, which was the White House the coronavirus response coordinator, and also worked directly under Vice President Mike Pence. Now, what CDC officials were saying in their own documents is that they were terrified of what the White House was doing and their attempts to undermine the scientific work by the CDC. Now, one of Pence's staff said she was repeatedly asked by one Mark Short, the vice president's chief of staff, to get the CDC to produce more reports and charts showing decline in coronavirus cases among young people. They'd specifically asked for the CDC to fudge data in order to say what it is that the president wanted to say for the sake of his own ego and possible re-election. Now, the White House seized on a bar chart the CDC gave to other agencies, which showed that 60% of the coronavirus deaths were people over the age of 75. Now, officials asked the CDC to provide a new chart that shows that people 18 and under as a separate group, rather than including them under the normal in the under 25 category. If you were under 25, even so much as an infant, this would be one section. They tried to give it another one and delete that in order to make it look better than it actually is. Now, in another instance, Dr. Birx took a direct role in the effort to push the CDC to incorporate work from a little-known mental health agency, basically the Mental Health Services Administration, that said school closures have a long-term psychological effect on the mental health of children, and that this was a justification for trying to open them up early from putting them under a direct physical threat by being exposed to the coronavirus, which we have seen a massive explosion in these cases since schools have reopened. So they were deliberately taking mental health statistics and using that to undermine physical health statistics. Now, over the summer, the hospitalizations of children remained relatively low, and because of this, groups were arguing that schools should be reopened. They should get back to regular work as soon as possible. And the American Academy of Pediatrics issued a statement to policymakers they should start having the goal of students physically back at school, even though it warned that areas with high infection rates would not be able to open safely. In other words, they said, these areas cannot open safely. Also reopen these areas. There you go. I mean, that should pretty much tell you everything right there. They know it was bad, but decided to do it anyway, and try to convince the government to do it anyway. Now, more recently, data was compiled by the group that shows hospitalizations and deaths from the coronavirus have increased at a faster rate among children and teenagers than amongst the general public, which shows that it's actually getting worse for children and teenagers. But all of this was being obscured by the president for the sake of his re-election campaign. You know, on July 23rd, with only a few hours before the White House was going to put out new guidelines, the White House further stunned the CDC officials by giving them a long list asking for critical edits by 1 p.m. In other words, the White House literally said, here are things that you cannot say, and here are things you have to say in a scientific report for a political bias, for politically motivated. So science had to be literally altered to fit the narrative that this administration wanted. And unfortunately, they had to do it. The list included Mark Meadows, Chief of Staff Jared Kushner, and the President's son-in-law and senior advisor, Larry Kudlow, the Director of the National Economic Council, and Stephen Miller, a White House policy advisor. So, again, more of this a blatantly unethical action, undermining science for the sake of political point scoring and trying to save his own re-election. But at the same time, we're supposed to be fed like this is some kind of totalitarian scheme to make people wear masks, because if they'll wear masks, that means Nazi death camps are next. So what we have is all this stuff behind the scenes of the government literally downplaying the infection, the disease, in order to score political points to look better, but we're supposed to believe all the lockdown measures are something that are created to produce totalitarianism. So their opinion that this is some kind of conspiracy goes directly against all the evidence that exists. There is literally no evidence to suggest that this is some kind of massive conspiracy to make people obey by showing the slightest concern for other people getting sick. So, I mean, that should have put a nail in the coffin for the conspiracy theory, but obviously it won't. Because with conspiracy theories, they're going to believe whatever it is they want to believe, even if all evidence, reason, and logic go completely against what they say.
Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.